Hello and welcome to the thewazchronicle, and today we are going to be focusing on the challenges from the left and the right. So who were the left and right wing? What did they actually do and why were they so important? All these will be covered in the following chronicle. As I mentioned earlier, we're going to be looking at the challenges from the left and right wing and how they impacted Weimar Germany. But before we do that, we actually need to know where they came from, who were the key individuals involved in each of these parties, and more importantly, what were their actual aims. So let's start off with the left wing. So where did the idea of communism come from? It all started with a guy named Karl Marx. It's that dude with a bucket on his head. Now, Karl Marx, aka Buckethead, decides it'd be a good idea to get the workers to rise up against the elite or the bourgeoisie, the people with power and money. So Buckethead's ideas spread far and wide. Why? Because the majority of the population were workers, and by workers I mean either farmhands or factory workers, and these people actually believed, hold up, we can actually think for ourselves, and we can challenge the people in power who had been in power for centuries. In time, communism becomes more popular. Karl Marx's ideas are adopted by a guy named Lenin. He's the guy in the party hat and the yellow tie in the center. Lenin decides that he is going to spread communism in Russia. There's a revolution in Russia in 1917 which overthrows Tsar Nicholas II. See, the Tsar had made an absolute shambles of the situation in Russia. It ended up helping lose the war. It ended up making people suffer. Food shortages, losses of life, and so on and so forth meant that people lost trust in the Tsar. Eventually he was overthrown. When he was, and a new government was trying to be formed, it was Lenin who came in and decided to change everything and make a communist government. Lenin gained a cult-like following and was seen as a godlike figure. Eventually, when he did die, it was the guy on the left in the party hat and the moustache, aka serial killer Stalin, who decided to take the reins. Stalin gained power on the idea that Lenin had chosen him, which was not true, but he pushed that idea forward, and then he decides that it's a good idea to kill about 21 million of his own people by putting them in gulags and starting to industrialize Russia, which in a sense, okay, fine, he industrialized Russia to help down the war, especially the Second World War, but he did kill 21 million people. That's almost double of what Hitler did. Obviously, Stalin's form of communism would be seen as extreme left. He was the far, far left, to be exact. And then you might be wondering to yourself, well, does it end there? And the answer is, of course not. You see the guy at the back, on the right hand side, that is Chairman Mao. He's from China and he decides to also adopt communism, and in the process kills millions. And then in the far left, you have the poster boy of communism, aka Fidel Castro, who actually turns Cuba communist. Now he's quite interesting because he challenges the United States and he plays a huge part in the Cold War, which obviously I'll come on to in another video. So that covers communism. Now the question is, what does that have to do with Germany? Now, as you know, there was a revolution in Russia in 1917, and at the end of the war in 1918, those ideas from the Russian Revolution, and communism in particular, decided to rear their head in Germany. Just bear in mind, there were moderate left-wing parties too, who believed in this idea called socialism, which I'll discuss in more detail in future videos. So now we've dealt with some left-wing parties, let's look at some right-wing ones. What did they actually believe in, and what kind of people were involved in these parties? So let's look at a recent example of a right-wing party. Obviously, I'm talking about Big Donald Trump, aka Make America Great Again. Now, Donald Trump is pretty much right-wing. He's a Republican. He believes in the idea of big business, the idea of nationalism, and he pretty much stokes and promotes racism and anti-Semitism at every turn, allegedly. And this brings me on to the juggernauts of the extreme right wing, the Nazi Party, were the most unpleasant of people. Now, the Nazi Party believed in nationalism, where you love your own country, individualism, where you put yourself and your family before others, and also they were extremely racist, didn't like people of other colour, and also anti-Semitic, absolutely hated Jewish people for no particular reason, and they blamed them for the ills of the world, again for no reason. So now you know about the left and right wing. You also know about the extreme left and right. The question is, was there only an extreme left and right? And the answer to that is no. You had the centre left and the centre right. So what kind of things did the left wing believe in? The left wing believed in equality for all, and especially for the workers. They believed in social change so that you can move from your class that you were. So if you're a worker, you could become middle class or upper class, and vice versa. And they also believed that wealth should be distributed equally between the population. However, the right wing believed in the idea of personal liberty or freedom, and the idea that one person should be in control of what they want. They also believed in capitalism, the idea that what you earn is what you keep, and anyone that doesn't earn it doesn't deserve it. They finally believed in private property, not the idea that the government controls everything, but the idea that if you bought your land, you own that land, that property is yours to keep, and it shouldn't be hoarded by the government. This meant that big businesses sprouted out everywhere, but it also created a divide between the rich and the poor. So what was the difference between the far left and the centre left, or the far right and the centre right? And the answer is quite simple. The far left believed in the idea of councils, almost a group that would be dictators who would control how that wealth is distributed. However, the centre left believed in democracy, how everything is voted, a bit more like socialism, where everyone gets a say. The far right, on the other hand, believed in dictators, the idea that one person keeps control, a strong authority, and the centre right believed that there should be a democratic process, again like the centre left. It's all well and good talking about the left and right wing, but let's put it into context. So let's look at Germany in itself. You've got the communists on the far left, the KPD, and I already told you they are the extreme left. Then you have the Social Democrat Party, the party of Ebert and Scheidemann, and they believed in more socialist principles, so they were left wing but centre left. Then you had the Centre Party. The Centre Party were usually the religious party, and they obviously wouldn't take a side generally, but as you know, in 1933 they did with the Concordat. Then you have the DNVP, and that is the right-wing party but centre-right. They were more democratic and not as extreme as the Nazis. They believed in individualism and big business. And then we have the Nazi party, who believed in spreading racism and hatred and the idea of having one strong individual in charge. As I mentioned previously, the moderate parties controlled the government. 80% of the seats in the assembly were controlled by the Social Democrats, the Democrats and the Centre Party. However, there were small groups of extreme left and right-wing parties. Now the question is, who were these left and right-wing parties? On the far right, we have the DNVP, the National Party, who were the biggest right-wing party in 1919. But you also had the NSDAP, who were the extreme right. We all know them as the Nazi party. So what did the right wing actually want? The right wing wanted a strong army. They wanted the Kaiser back in power. They supported capitalism. They wanted private ownership of land. And they championed the idea of family, law and order, business, and traditional values. Most important of all, they put the rights of the nation before any individual. The idea of nationalism. On the other end of the spectrum were the extreme left. The KPD, or the German Communist Party, were the biggest party in 1919. The idea of the extreme left was simple. They wanted to oppose capitalism. They did not believe in privatizing. They did not want to own land. They thought that you get all the land and you share it out between the workers equally. That means there'll be no big businesses. The extreme left was a massive threat to big businesses who felt that their land would be taken off them. So we now know the viewpoints of the left and right wing and how they deeply resent Weimar Germany. But the question is, how does this manifest? And that will be answered in the following chronicle. We will look at the Spartacist uprising of the left wing and also how it was put down, who supported the Weimar government, and in this case it was an individual by the name of Wolfgang Kapp. Him and his Free Corps then decide to overthrow the Weimar government themselves. They were extremely right-wing. And finally we'll move on to look at assassinations that took place as a result of left and right-wing ideologies. Hey, you made it to the end of the video. I hope it was helpful. I know it was a bit long, but I tried to get in as much detail as I could. If you do get a moment, please do look at other videos, and if you do get a chance, please do subscribe. It does help me massively. Thank you for your support.